morning I wore a bow tie. And you know what the subject is. Did I turn this on? Was it already on? Can't tell. Testing. Okay. Yes, in honor of today's subject, I am wearing a bow tie. I should have brought my date with me. But, I didn't. You and your buddies go to the mall. And when you get there, you see a couple of teens out in the parking lot making out. Making out is a substitute phrase for deep kissing. Just in case somebody didn't know. And upon closer examination, you are shocked to see that it's your mom. Your mom is kissing somebody in the parking lot. It was, of course, some 25, 30 years ago, but it's still your mother. And you look at the guy, and the guy is not your father. So you run home, and you ask your mom, who was that guy that you were kissing in the parking lot at the mall? And she tells you, oh, that was my second boyfriend. That wasn't even your father, of course, and that was her second boyfriend. How many boyfriends she had after, we don't know. But you're kind of weirded out. What if that was the other way, and that wasn't your father, and your father wasn't kissing your mother, and you don't know how many girlfriends that he had? So, how do you feel about that when you know that your mom or your dad wasn't your first relationship to your mom and your dad? If you see people walking around your halls in school or outside somewhere, doesn't matter, and they look really chummy, they are boyfriend and girlfriend, so they say, and everybody knows them as such. You say that's nice? Do you say that's nice? That's nice. Do you think that's a good thing? Would you like your own boyfriend or girlfriend? Now when we look at that, we actually have adopted the philosophy of the United States. Or maybe it's more prevalent now in other places too. And I'm sure it is, and I'm sure it is in Korea too now, but it wasn't like that in Japan now, China now. Probably in most of the world, the philosophy is the same as the philosophy that probably started in the United States or somewhere else. I don't know the history of that. But when I was in Korea, there was none of that. I was 9 when I came, and I came to the United States in 1974. So in 1974, it wasn't any of that stuff. I saw it when I came to the United States. And when I saw it, I thought, ew, what? Crazy. And now we don't bat an eye, We only bat an eye, most of us, when we see a guy and a guy kiss. Now that, for now, that doesn't disturb us. I mean, it disturbs us, but eventually it may not disturb us either, okay? Which is a problem. Okay? So here, if it's not a problem now, it should be. When a person acts, or when two people act like boyfriend and girlfriend, holding hands and kissing and all that stuff, it should repel you inside. You should say, that's not right. All right. Let's get to the text. It begins with, do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. I'm going to skip over that. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. Now, in terms of just delving into this text, Paul is exhorting a pastor to know how to relate to brothers and sisters in Christ. And as a leader, to model this behavior for the rest of his congregation. And I can talk about the older man, but what I want to do is focus on just relationships in general and how we interact with one another. Because this question about boyfriend and girlfriend relationships, this and should I get that, and what should we do, and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm saying that in this tone because of the way that I feel about the whole subject, and we'll get more into that. But here is Pastor Timothy being instructed about how to relate with brothers and sisters. And he's very, very clear. He says, older, you treat like moms and dads, with honor and respect. With younger, you treat them like your brothers and sisters. Now, one thing that needs to be said about this is Timothy is believed to have been an only child. He's an only child. Okay. That begs the question, how does he know how to treat younger brothers and younger sisters if he didn't have any? And Paul is instructing him to do that. So where would he get that information, and how will he learn how to treat a younger brother or sister, not having had one, and not having had the instruction from his parents to know how to appropriately treat the younger brother or sister? Now, that we are on the subject, we know how to treat brothers and sisters by instinct. And by instinct, I mean we accumulate this understanding through the interaction that we see in other families, other siblings. We also have this conscience of knowing how to treat a fellow human being. So, all of that wrapped up, we already know how to treat one another by observation and by conscience. The conscience that God has embedded into us. Like, we automatically know stealing is wrong because of conscience. God has embedded that in us. Even if we didn't have a single law, we would already know that we can't kill, we can't steal, we can't lie, all of those things. So people who do them, saying that there is no law against it, if there was, would be lying to themselves. Paul brings this out in Romans. But you and I instinctively know God has embedded in us the conscience to know how to treat one another as brothers and sisters. So Paul tells them that without explaining, he just tells them that's the way that you're supposed to do it. Okay. And I am explaining this because it's going to support what I'm going to tell you about this matter of boyfriend and girlfriend. In Mark 10:19 it says, you know the commandments: do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony, do not defraud, honor your father and your mother. Now this is Jesus rattling out the commandments. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony. And then he sticks this little thing in there. Do not defraud. And that little thing comes before honor your father and your mother. So he squeezes that in there, and you go, that's not one of the commandments. Let's just pull that out of the book and throw it out because, we don't have a precedent for it. Everybody agree? Okay, let's move on. Jesus squeezes that in there. And you have to find out, why did he squeeze that in there? What is this default stuff that has no precedent in the Old Testament, or does it? Let us behave decently. This is Romans chapter 13, verses 13 and 14. Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in orgies and drunkenness, and not in sexual immorality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the sinful nature. Whoa, that's a lot of stuff. What is this sexual immorality, debauchery, dissension, or even orgies? Some of these words need to be explained. Okay. Put your maturity hats on, okay? Some of you youngins, put your maturity hats on, because when I explain this, you're going to want to giggle. But reality is, this is what the scripture says, and you have to know how to do it, how to understand it. The basics of Bible study, okay, and the basics of life. If you don't understand the word, what do? Look it up in the dictionary, right? So you have to look up words that you don't know in the dictionary. So if you're young and you run across circumcision, you go, what's circumcision? You look up circumcision, you say, what? Yikes, the Bible talks about that? Yes, it does. Okay, so you look up these words. You look up words like orgy and debauchery. Debauchery is a general term. Orgy is a very, very specific term. Okay? And all I'm going to say about that word is, and I don't want to explain everything, but it's more than two people engaging in physical activity. Okay? Everybody got that? Okay. And you know what I mean by physical activity. Physical activity that only a husband and a wife should be engaged in. Alright? So, and then sexual immorality is anything designed outside of what God has designed for the husband and wife. Okay? That's sexual immorality. So if you're a boyfriend and girlfriend and you're kissing, and that's reserved for the husband and wife, that's sexual immorality. So if we see sexual immorality and you say, oh, c'est la vie, that's just it. No, we don't say that. In our mind, we say that's sexual immorality. Debauchery is anything outside of husband and wife activity that is not designed for husband and wife activity. And I don't know, I really don't want to describe that. I just want to tell you that that's what it is. It's inappropriate physical activity beyond what God has designed. Okay? Alright. So, he delineates this, plus he says, do not defraud. We'll get to that. And then just a couple more verses about debauchery and all that kind of stuff. In Galatians 5:19, it says, the acts of the sinful nature are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery. And then in Revelations, nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality. And then lastly, 1 Thessalonians 4:3 and 4. It is God's will that you should be sanctified, that you should avoid sexual immorality, that each of you should learn to control his own body in a way that is holy and honorable. Okay? So the basis of how we relate to the church and the outside world is related to how we relate to each other in the home. Because what Paul is telling Timothy is, how do you relate to each other in the home, brothers and sisters? That's why I advocate more than one child, more than two children. Preferably, mixed gender. So, the relationship in the home, the context of the home, determines how we treat each other on the outside. That means we have to do our home better, because it impacts every other relationship that we have. So now go tell your parents to have another child if you're an only child. I want a sibling, because I want to learn how to treat my younger siblings well. Okay. So, how do you treat your siblings in Christ? Okay? This will change your world. Because if you start thinking about it this way, you will not think of the things that you are thinking about in treating people like you treat them, and allowing other people to treat them like they treat them. You will not join in their activities. You will not join in their jokes. It will be automatically inappropriate. So this is how you do it. Anybody who is a male or a female, from your point of view, you treat as your future wife or your future husband. So if you're a girl, you treat the other guy as though you were your future husband. If you're a boy or a young man, you treat the other young lady as a future wife or a sister. Anybody who is not related to you is a potential wife. Anybody who is not related to you is a potential husband. Sure? You don't know whether you're going to end up marrying the person or not. You have no idea. Eventually, they can become your husband or your wife. Here is the rule that God has laid down. If a person is a Christian, then the person is a potential spouse. God says we can't marry non-Christians, so we are definitely discriminating. Okay? According to the law of God, we're discriminating. We're discriminating non-Christians and Christians, and we need to. God says you can't marry a non-Christian, but if the person is a Christian, you can marry the person regardless. Fair game. Which means any brother or any sister is a potential spouse. And you have no idea about the future, so this is reality for you. Every woman or girl is a potential wife for the guy, and every guy is a potential husband for the girl, as long as both of them are Christians. And you don't even know whether a non-Christian is going to become a Christian and then eventually end up being your spouse. So non-Christians need to be treated that way too. Because I was a non-Christian before I became a Christian. So, we have no difference in the way that we treat other people of the opposite gender. And then, according to Paul, same gender in this passage in 1 and 2. So, every person is a potential, and therefore, every potential is worthy of your respect and honor. But then this, boyfriend, girlfriend, or getting married business, the understanding is, how do I get to know someone in order to know the person better? If I don't know the person, then I don't know whether I would like to marry the person or not. It's a good question, right? How do I get to know a person? All right? The relationship question needs to be answered in light of the first relationship. talking about the first human relationship, Adam and Eve. And when we go back to that passage, we know the value of God in the way that He did it, and His philosophy and His understanding and the way that He works. And then some of you are going to go back to your own background and go, that has potential, and that one looks a little off, that doesn't sound right. But here it is. And we have all kinds of background support for areas and other areas that we need to trace out based on this pattern of God that He set in Genesis. Okay, here's Adam and here's Eve. First of all, Eve came from Adam. You understand that? And then, what did He do? He brought her to him, and they got married. Remember, the little aspects of the story that I mentioned here and there in different messages, I'm asking you to pull those together, but just in case you don't remember, I'm going to tell you. Okay? This is the first wedding. And the very first wedding sets a precedent for the rest of the Scripture and the rest of life. So, if God wanted certain things to be done in a certain way, then He would do it, and He would show it in the very first one. What did He do? Well, He took the man, and He took the woman, and He brought them together, and they got married. Okay? If the philosophy was, hey, I need to know this woman very well, I need to spend some time with her, I need to interview her parents, I need to know about her siblings, Adam would have said, wait a minute, Lord, would you give us a couple of days to so we can get to know each other? Lord, I don't know this guy from Adam. I don't know this guy. Only 2 people got that joke. So she says, I don't know this man. Would you give me some time so that I can get to know this man? Give us a couple weeks, a couple months, maybe a couple years. That was not the case. God says, Adam, meet your wife. And then Eve, meet your husband. They get married right there. So, if we think that we need to get to know each other and all of that kind of stuff before we get married, then we don't have a precedent for that. So the philosophy that rose and the philosophy that we live by came from somewhere, but it didn't come from the Lord. Because He says, if you follow me and you follow me, I'll bring you two together, you can get married, and you can have a wonderful life. As long as you're obeying me, and as long as you're obeying me, you can have a wonderful life, even if you don't know each other. And this marriage is by faith, faith in the one who brought them together. So don't embrace the world's philosophy that we have to get to know each other before we get married. Please. Where is that written? So don't embrace the world's philosophy. I'm going to share some other things too. Okay? So what is this thing, dating? What is dating? Dating is an American term. Or they popularized it. Okay, so I'm going to categorize dating. Dating is when two people who want to hang out together. That's casual dating. They're just hanging out. Hanging out. No goals. No certainty about what they want to do, what's going to happen. Just have fun, If you're a guy or a girl, just hang out. Doesn't really... There's no idea what the goals are. They just hang out and have fun. What they consider fun. They have no idea what the definition of that is. They just play it as it comes. You have no idea whether you're going to get married or not. Just want to be boyfriend and girlfriend, so to speak. What is this boyfriend-girlfriend business? We like each other. We want to spend more time together as opposite gender. Because it feels good. It's a new experience for you. Then there's the serious dating where you say, I'm only going to see you. No other guy or no other girl. Okay? And exclusively hanging out with you. Because in the casual dating, you may like other girls, and you may talk to other girls, and you may spend time with other girls. So everything's casual. This is serious because you're saying you might be a potential mate. It's a big, big might. And then it may last, a short time, may last a long time, but you're going to concentrate on this one person. The conversations are serious, or more serious. Maybe you'll talk about, how many kids, or where you like to live, all of that stuff. But even in this, both sets, dating is fake. Fake. You're not you. Not really. The ladies have to be really prepared. They got to do their hair. They got to put makeup on. They got to dress nicely and smell good. And the guys have to do the same thing. Oh man, problem with this, I need the fast cure. All of that kind of stuff. You're not you. You're a fake you. And you tolerate, you don't like something that she does, and you tolerate that because you like her so much, you overlook that. No, that's not a problem because I like her so much. She can have all kinds of problems. And he can have all kinds of problems. It's okay. Because you like her and you like him so much. It doesn't become a problem until you get married. Oh, that's got to go. Oh, that's got to go. Oh, that's definitely got to go. All of these things. So you're fake. You're putting on a little set of glasses that makes the other person look like God or a goddess. And then the problem is, and this is potential and it's actual, of oversharing. The problem with oversharing. What do I mean by that? Some things that you should not share, you share. Why do I say you shouldn't share? Well, because that's something that you should be sharing with your husband or your wife. Why are you sharing that with your boyfriend or girl? You're not married yet. But you're sharing that with somebody who is not your boyfriend or girlfriend. After you get married, they have information on you that only your husband or your wife should have. You think that boyfriend and girlfriend are having fun. And you're partially right. They are having fun. You're missing out. So you should go join them. Find one for yourself and say, yeah, see, I got one too. But just remember, when you do that, you're missing out on your relationship with your husband and your wife. Okay? What do I mean by that? God is not saying, oh, look at all the fun that the world is having, and you're missing out, so boo-hoo. Or God is saying, well, they're having, so why don't you just join them? Be a part of that too. It's crazy, actually. And you only regret it after the fact. So you regret all of that stuff after you get married. Because let's say you go to a restaurant, you're taking a date out, go to this nice restaurant, you sit down and you eat, and you're having a great conversation, you enjoy yourself, the conversation's great, all you're woozy-doozy, and little hearts floating up to the top like bubbles and popping and all that stuff. You go home with the flower, and you she loves me not, she loves me not, and then you completely change it. She loves me, she loves me, she loves me. She loves me not is not even an option. So you go to that restaurant, have a great time. You never end up getting married. You may break up. You might find somebody else, and you say, "Man, she's all. This is my new fling right here, and maybe she's gonna be my wife someday." And da 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 da. She doesn't become your wife either. Later on, you graduate from college or whatever, and then you get married to this woman you think is the best. I mean, she's better than any woman in the world, and it's better than sliced bread and all of that kind of stuff, and she's your wife. And then you drive by the restaurant, your first date, and your wife says, I heard great things about that restaurant. Let's go there. And you go, that was a wonderful time that I had with somebody else other than my wife. That restaurant is off limits. You can't even have a simple meal at a nice restaurant with your wife because your first date was that, and you don't want to ruin your date with your own wife in a restaurant that's really nice. You can't even enjoy it. And we can say that about anything. The first movie that you went to, you didn't go there with your wife. The movie theater that you went to, you didn't go there. Even something like simple as a board game. My very first board game with my girlfriend, it's Monopoly. Now when I play Monopoly with my wife, it's like, I really, really enjoy it, yes, but I remember that I had this wonderful game with my first girlfriend. Ruined that too. And I'm sharing with my husband about, the stuff that happened in my childhood, and it's just marvelous. I remember sharing that with my girlfriend. That's not brand new for you either. And especially, remember, I still do. Oh, no, that's not I still do. It's the teenage, I will wait until my husband or my wife. Well, if you had physical, sexual experience before your husband and wife, that ruined it too. Because you gave away the most intimate part of you to somebody other than your husband or your wife. That's the ultimate. And then you go to the wedding, and on your wedding day and your wedding night, your husband or wife gets second. Because you already gave it away before you got married. You get second. So here in the garden, God says, everything about this relationship is first between the husband and the wife. They never went to a restaurant. They never had a board game. There was no bowling. Even their very first meal was the very first meal together. Everything about it was first. Everything that they shared about their wants and their desires and everything else was first with them. Intimacy was first with them. Everything was first. What is God saying? God's saying something should be reserved for your husband and wife all your life. All your life. So what is my philosophy or exhortation in terms of how to get married? Because that's the ultimate question of boyfriend and girlfriend, right? Boyfriend and girlfriend shouldn't even be a thing. When we use boyfriend, girlfriend, we should say boyfriend is a friend who is a boy, and girlfriend is a person who is a friend is a girl. So this thing about being together and going together, all of that stuff, we shouldn't even have it. The fact that we have it is a problem. So I should call my friend. I went to his his mom and dad had a 50th wedding anniversary yesterday at a party. Went to it. I was best man at his wedding. And the brother, I knew him since high school. I should be able to call Mickey boyfriend and not have smirks, because they know that it's a friend who is a boy. And if I said she's my girlfriend, I would, she's a friend who's a girl. That's the way we should use the terms, but that's not the way it is. So I would never call Mickey my boyfriend, because then you'd laugh. Hey, Mickey, my boyfriend. I spent time with him yesterday. Huh? Aren't you married? It would sound like that. So, here's my philosophy on how to meet and get married. When can we date? Alright, you're going to be surprised. Never. You go, what? We're going to get married then. We're supposed to get to know somebody. Well, I already told you about getting to know somebody. Forget that. I'm not talking about getting to know somebody as in you want their resume, you want their credentials, and then you're going to decide whether you're going to marry them or not. No, none of that. What I advocate is courtship. Courtship is much different than marriage. And courtship begins not with her, but with her father. And if she doesn't have a father, okay, then of course the second in charge, mom, you begin with mom. And if she's not, she's an orphan, or her parents are not around anymore, or not in her life, or whatever, then you start with the person who she respects as an authority in her life and gives her guidance. You start with that individual, doesn't matter who it is. Okay? Just like the kinsman redeemer is first the immediate, the primary son, and then the son after that, and then the cousin and all that stuff. You just keep going. Just like president, vice president, when president, something happens to him, the vice president becomes president, and then the speaker, etc., etc. Got a whole line of them. Okay? So you begin with that. And then after you obtain permission from that person, then you can begin courtship. Courtship is, this is my life. This is what you talk about in that conversation. This is my life. This is God's work in my life. Here I am. And then the same thing for the other person. This is my life. God work in my life, and here I am. What he shares and what she shares is their lives, their testimony. Their relationship with the Lord, in other words. Because everything in marriage is based on your relationship with your Lord. So, Adam's relationship with God, Eve's relationship with God. And then God brings them together. After that, he talks about something that he is called to do. Why? Because the wife has to follow the husband, which means she has to agree with his calling. If she agrees with the calling, you two, there's nothing stopping you two from getting married. Nothing. You didn't put on makeup, you didn't fancy your hair, you didn't put on a dress, you didn't put on a suit. It's not fake, it's just, this is my life, and this is her life. Now, if you want verification, you talk to their friends. Talk to the parents, siblings. I would advise you to go and visit the home, just to see how the interaction is. But when the Lord calls you two together, and this is the question that I asked at the marriage conference, everybody's like, what? At first. I said, raise your hands if you believe in an arranged marriage. And And like, I don't know, out of 100 and some people, only a few people raised their hands. Okay? It's funny. Because then I asked the next question. How many of you actually believe that God was involved in bringing you together and getting you to marry? And almost everybody, everybody raised their hand. Very good. You don't believe in arranged marriages, but you believe that God arranged your marriage? That doesn't make any sense. All of you then believe in arranged marriages. Because your marriage was arranged by the Lord. Now, how come He can't use your parents to do that? Like, Jesus was born out of an arranged marriage. Yeah. There are a number of arranged marriages in the Old Testament. Some in the New. Okay? But what is wrong with an arranged marriage? Nothing. Because God does it all the time. And He can use your parents to do it. So, what I'm advocating is a completely different way of looking at the husband and wife relationship that begins with the relationship between a young man and a young woman together. So you don't have to run around and try to get to know somebody from the beginning when God is capable of bringing you together in a microsecond in order to get married. Let me share with you a couple of ones. I was in seminary and my friend said, "Oh man, I met this woman. She's from this church, and I really like her." In it was a month and 6 weeks. I think it was 6 weeks, a month and a half. He proposed to her, and he said yes. They got married 6 months. 6 months after, something like that. And then, another friend of mine did one better. She was from Korea, and she came to study, I think for a short time, and somebody introduced her to him. She barely spoke English, and he barely spoke Korean. But somehow God turned the lights on, he said, "Yeah, that's going to be my wife." In 3 weeks, he proposed to her. And they said, "Well, she said, my parents are leaving for Korea. They have to go back to Korea because this was only a vacation / whatever. And they're leaving in 3 weeks. Can we get married before they leave?" So they had to arrange a wedding in 3 weeks. And they got married before the parents took off. And they had 2 kids, a son and a daughter. And they've been married longer than I have. Right? Still married. When I decided, okay, I need to propose to my wife. I'm not going to tell you the entire story because that's not enough time. I asked her father, and he said yes, and I proposed to her. We courted for 2 weeks. I proposed to her after that. So I pursued her for 2 weeks, and then, I already knew that I was going to propose to her in our first conversation when I asked her about, or asked her for her father's phone number so that I can contact him. And so in 2 weeks I proposed to her, and then in 4 months we got married. That was 20 years and 6 kids ago. Okay? So I'm just giving you 3 examples of where the time is not that long. There was no time between, "Here, Adam, meet your wife. Hey, Eve, meet your husband. There was no time gap. There's not a long 7. We dated for 7 years before we got married. I go, that's horrible. And some people date for like 6 years, whatever years, and then they don't get married. The longer you stay with a person, the worse it is, because especially for the wife or the woman, it creates an expectation in her heart that if you don't fulfill, you defrauded her. And that's what Jesus says, is do not defraud. In other words, don't hang it up there and say, hey, you could get this. You could get this. You could get this. Nah. And leave. We have a potential here. We can get married. We can get married. We can get married. Nah, I found somebody else. That's defrauding. Because the longer you stay, the more expectation there is of getting married. Is this going somewhere? So you strung her up for 6 years or 7 years, and then you left her to dry. What did you learn about her that you are going to take with you that you should not have? Same thing with the girl. What are you taking with you from him that you should not have? When should you pursue somebody? When should you court? You should court when you are ready to get married. In other words, you don't date, No. The reason why you're pursuing somebody is because you are ready to be married right now. If you're not ready to be married right now, don't start. Oh, I gotta finish school. Don't start a relationship. You got 2 more years to go. Don't start a relationship. Because you're going to string the person along. And it may not work out. Then what are you going to do? Paul said something that was really disturbing, and I thought about it, but it's fair. He says, if you are engaged to be married, and you're bordering on an inappropriateness, marry her. Okay? Marry her. But if you decide not to marry her, then you didn't violate any laws. You didn't sin. You mean to tell me we can break up an engagement and it's okay? Because that's what he's saying. But what? That's craziness. But he says, if you decide that you don't want to get married, it's okay. Remember, he's coming from a Jewish background. Okay? So you got to understand this in a Jewish background. They were arranged marriages generally. Son, you're going to marry her. And he goes, yeah. And then, daughter, you're going to marry him. And she goes, okay. It wasn't like, hey, but I don't like him. So I'm going to find my own husband. It's none of that. So coming from that background, mom says you're going to marry her, and parents say you're going to marry her, and then parents say, oh yeah, you're going to marry him, and the guy goes, I decided to remain celibate. That's what Paul's talking about. If you decide not to get married, it's okay, even if the marriage was arranged. If you want to remain single and serve the Lord. It's not like I want to pick my own wife or I want to pick my own husband. He's not talking about that. So I thought, oh man, my dedication to the Lord comes first. My marriage, or my wanting to get married, is second. And even in marriage, and we talked about this in the marriage series. Now our dedication is doubled. Because when you get married, both of you are dedicated to serving the Lord. Now together, just as Adam and Eve were. The question of, and teenagers ask this all the time when we come up with relationship questions. What can we do? How far can we go? Can we hold hands? Can we hug? Can we kiss? Can we do other things? That question would never come up if you treated the opposite gender as your future wife or your future husband. Because then you ask yourself, would I do this with somebody else's wife? Or would I do this with somebody else's husband? Would you? Would you hold somebody else's wife's hands? Would you kiss somebody else's wife? No, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't dishonor your best friend's wife. And you don't know whether that person's going to be your best friend's wife. Are you? Or do you? No, you would never know. Let's say your best friend ended up marrying somebody in the youth group who happened to be your past girlfriend, whom you held hands with and kissed. Now your best friend marries her in the future. You kiss somebody else's wife. How dishonoring is that? So you never ask that question because you're going to treat your sibling, or your brothers and sisters in Christ as your siblings, and as somebody else's future husband and wife, or your future husband and wife. That's why you would never make fun of a woman, a girl. You would never make fun of a man because you would be insulting your own wife in the future. And you could be insulting somebody else's wife or husband. Would you do that? No, you wouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. So that question is all messed up. The fact that you would ask that question means that your mind is already sold to the world's philosophy. We're trying to bring it back. Ask yourself, when would I sit down with somebody in the opposite gender, having a good time, eating and drinking, holding hands or whatever, after you got married, and she's not your wife? When would you do that? When would you do that? You would never do that. So why would you do that before you get married to her? But you would do that if that was your brother or your sister. I'm not talking about holding hands and kissing. I'm talking about sitting out. You can actually have Emma sit down at dinner and whatever. My son and my daughter, who are 19 and 17 right now, you know, they used to go out. You think, what? That's sick. No, it was wonderful. Beautiful. He would take her out to dinner. He would take her out to a movie. This is brother and sister just fellowshipping. Okay? And I'm going, man, with a depraved mind, that would be sick, but this is wonderful. He fed her. He took her to the movies. They come home laughing. And we asked them about, how was the movie? They said, they're great. How was dinner? We went to this place. They're just talking as brothers and sisters. I'm going, that's fabulous. Remember, God says in Psalm, He says, how wonderful it is when brothers and sisters live in harmony. They're treating each other like real brothers and sisters. They are brothers and sisters. Somebody looking on the outside thinking, hey, they look like they're on a date. But it's pure. So if you can treat your friend who's a guy, or friend who's a girl, like a brother or a sister, right? You can do that, but for the sake of the way that it looks, you take more people with you. Okay? You take more people with you. You can be pure in that, my son and my daughter, they can be pure in that. It may even look funny to everybody, but when they find out that they're brothers and sisters, everything makes it okay. But you don't have that luxury if the person is not related to you, because people are still going to think. So in order to avoid appropriateness of sight, not that it is inappropriate in the way that you're treating each other, but for the sake of that, removing that, what you would do is take other people with you. You can have sweet fellowship then. You can treat each other like brothers and sisters then. And you can talk about stuff, normal stuff then. So as I said, when's a good time to pursue somebody? When you're ready to get married. Apart from that, get busy serving the Lord. Don't worry about that, because at the proper time, God's going to bring you the right person, and He will arrange the marriage that you want. Are we not waiting? Are we not seeking the will of God for every area of our lives? Absolutely. He's going to take care of this one too. Really. Tune in for my story and all of that stuff at another time, because this is a marvelous subject that we need to deal with and actually work through. But now, do you get it? If you start with the understanding that this is my future wife, you're not going to let other people insult her. Do you understand? And you're not going to join in any insults toward a young lady. Same the other way around. You're not going to make fun of a guy if he's going to end up being your husband. So when we treat each other already, as Paul told Timothy, if we treat each other like brothers and sisters, and you're going, man, our family's not like that. We don't treat each other with respect and honor and uplifting. Terrible. That's horrible. You got to change that right away then. Because you are learning how to treat your future wife or husband in the relationship of the family there. And how to treat other people. So you got to get that right first. So as you do, as you understand, as you put this into practice on a daily basis, you are preparing yourself in character for your future wife or your future husband. So the next time somebody says, "This is my girlfriend," you say, "I'm not going to do that," in your mind. You say, "Oh, nice to meet you," that's great, But you're saying that in tongue in cheek because you don't want to participate in that kind of philosophy. You can rejoice with them, but you are reservedly rejoicing because you know they're going to be missing out. My very first kiss was not my wife. I kissed a girl 3 times. I was a senior in high school. She was a freshman who was a friend of a sister of a friend, my friend's sister. Okay? I didn't kiss her first. She kissed me. I thought she kissed me because she liked me. So I took her out on 3 dates because I adopted the philosophy of the world. I took her out on 3 days and I said, "No, this is not going to work out." So we mutually broke it off. And I didn't kiss anybody since. And then my wife was my second kiss. I would have loved my wife to be my first. But it's not. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have said, "Whoa, back off. If you're not my wife, I'm not kissing you." But at least I only have 3, But what if you had multiple kisses with multiple women? Right? You'd have all those kisses to remember now that you're married to your